Yeah, intellectual property protections exist to do two fundamental things. One, they ensure that creators, inventors, and small innovators can invest in new ideas without the liability of their work being copied instantly. And two, they incentivize innovation by limiting the exclusive rights that they give and push innovations to the public domain after the duration protected. Innovation, no matter the form, be it like a new product, process, creative work, it all requires time, risk, and labor to produce. Without these protections, all this intellectual property can essentially just be stolen by any other party. It leaves inventors with little options to protect their ideas, and many of them will probably just choose to either never implement an idea, never reveal the discovery, or anything like that, just because they really just stand to only lose. Uh, the framers of the Constitution understood this risk. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution actually gives Congress the power to promote the progress of science and arts by granting authors and inventors limited exclusive rights to their works. The intent to this was to encourage investment in innovation and not to create some type of permanent privilege. So a lot of people try to cite things like copyright and patents as a way to protect monopolies, when essentially it was created to avoid that. The founders were fearful that innovation would be slowed without these protections, so they set forth the system that would encourage innovation by limiting the time a party can enjoy these exclusive rights, and then pushing it to that public domain to be utilized by the public interest after. Intellectual property protections help prevent these monopolies because without them, really the only protections you have is to keep it a secret. And by keeping it a secret, other people really never get to see these innovations or build on anything. Intellectual property protections actually changed that because they require the disclosure after a certain amount of time of protections. So pretty much the public domain and the public interest gets to benefit from this. To summarize, IP not only exists to protect creators and inventors, it exists to make sure that even those with the means to implement ideas without the knowledge at first still have that chance after a certain time. It balances the need for incentive with the greater public interest, and it enables innovation to flourish without knowledge being locked away from others. And that's why my team's position is that IP should be legally protected.
Okay. If people are able to own ideas, where does this line in the sand get drawn?
What do you mean line in the sand for ideas?
Well, you need an arbitrary line to be like, okay, this is when you can own an idea or when you can't. Unless if you think that maybe you can patent something like the PB&J. Do you believe that?
Oh no, there's certain standards for copyright and patents. It has to like contain a certain use. It has to be specific. It can't be just a copy of anything else, because that's kind of implied in the whole copyright kind of deal. A PB&J would be not specific enough and not different enough from any other type of idea to be patented, I believe. That'd be more of like a trade secret kind of thing.
So you don't believe in broad patents?
For a PB&J, no.
All right. And when it comes to patents preventing monopolies, it states in the very same government that you're citing that patent law is actually a privileged temporary monopoly. So you're saying that they prevent monopolies, though the government that provides these patent laws actively acknowledges that it is a granted limited monopoly.
Yeah, limited by what? It's time. It's like the exclusive rights is the time period. So you get the exclusive rights for a certain amount of time, and then you have to share that knowledge with everyone else. Without it, people can just take that knowledge, keep it to themselves, never share it, and then no one gets to benefit at the end.
Does any other property expire because of time? Like, should I be able to take your home away after 7 years, or?
No, but this is intellectual property. It's nothing like scarcity like that'd be introduced in like real estate or whatnot.
Well, do you believe in supporting artificial scarcity then?
For ideas, this would be kind of that, correct? Like it would be introducing a slight artificial scarcity for a certain amount of time to protect those inventors and creators' interests. Yes, but it's not a permanent monopoly. This isn't saying like these people get this technology forever. That'd be more aligned with no protections, and they just keep the trade secrets themselves.
Right here, Kevin, is the patent for the product. Right here is the patent for the process.
Can I see the process patent?
Here, take them both.
So nobody else can make boneless ribs?
Let me be more specific. No one else can make a fully cooked rib with either one or more bones removed from it.
Wow.
What you just witnessed, ladies and gentlemen, was a man patenting both the product and the process of making boneless ribs. Think about that for a second. A food company is telling you that you can't take bones out of ribs and sell them like he did. So ask yourself when you see something like this, who and what is this protecting? Earlier, during my cross-examination, it was stated that they would not patent the peanut butter and jelly because it's too broad. Yet, we have examples of the patent fully working in such a manner to prevent people from simply cooking and selling ribs without bones in them. So before they say the patent law does not work like this, it doesn't operate like this, and it only does this, I want to keep in mind that that is from one of the largest shows in America, showing a full example of granted patents doing such a thing. The idea of IP is one that's artificial, draws lines in the sand to create barriers and prevent others from capitalizing on pure thought. This essentially makes any violation of IP a thought crime. I challenge the audience and the judges here today to think about what life would have been like if IP laws have always existed. Imagine a life where the first person that whittled a bow, brewed a stew, developed a wheel, created bricks, or even forged swords had exclusive rights over the idea. And ask yourself, would we have gotten where we are today with that mentality? My opponents are going to have to justify either a moral or utilitarian case to justify the authoritarian use of IP law. I find that it is hard to justify either when IP law infringes on natural property rights, restricts inherent freedoms, and it's this adherence to a system that perpetuates poverty and needless loss of life. I also want to point out the fact that we're all streamers here. I think the fact that the streaming is propped up by the open source use of technology such as OBS is a pretty telling sign of what life looks like without IP interference. And when he talks about the Constitution and how our founding fathers also supported monopolies, keep in fact that America during Alex Hamilton's time actually took out and paid bounties for people to steal IP law from Britain and bring it back to the US to kick off the Industrial Revolution, and is credited for making us such a self-reliant, rich, and prosperous nation.
Sounds good. I guess I just want to know generally how you feel about regulation. Do you think there should be like no regulation in general, or do you think it's a good thing, or
I think
broadly speaking?
regulation could be good or bad depending on the circumstance of how it's used. But I generally believe whenever you're looking at the government, you should go with the least invasive means of treating stuff. This is a medical concept where, like, if my arm hurts, you don't go to chopping off the arm. You go, oh, try stretching it, try wearing like an arm brace, try medication, try minor surgery, then major surgery. And we should treat all infringement on freedoms in such a way. So when thinking about regulation,
hold on, but so the most like essentially like you're saying just like the most fringe and frivolous like regulation would be, you know, not acceptable and like not ideal to have in the system, right?
you would have to define what you mean by like fringent and like.
I just said fringe or like frivolous regulation, like just a regulate, like you're saying, like not all regulation is good. So I'm just imagining that there's some level of regulation where you're like, you know, this is actually frivolous and hurting business. So that's why I wouldn't want it.
Yeah, there's regulations like that exist. Yes.
Right. So would it be possible that not all uses of IP would be ideal, but the most like fringe and frivolous, like saying like a patent on baby back ribs would be like one of those, you know, fringe and frivolous things that you could like cut off and like not even like say is like a prime example of what intellectual property is even meant to protect. It's just one of those kind of more frivolous things that, you know, like too much regulation, it's just not, you know, doing its job, I guess. Sorry,
time's out, but I'm going to go ahead and let you respond to that, Kay. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you can try to make that argument, but it would only apply if there was regulations and IP that actually supported some type of moral or utilitarian good overall that was unanimous and so clear and evident to see, but I think you're not going to find that, so I don't think it applies.
Yeah, I'll even start by responding really quick, saying that you're saying that it must be moral, but I feel like maybe the best uses of IP are things that morality only like barely touches upon. Like I could even grant that some things for like life-saving treatments, or some things in the medical industry that are just like too high cost, like we can make some changes there, but that doesn't mean that intellectual property as a whole isn't worth protecting. So, like, there's plenty of reasons not to like big corporations, and I'm sure we'll hear plenty of that as time goes on tonight. But, I'd say that we should consider how IP protects the consumer. Something we all likely agree upon would be work done by agencies like the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, and maybe its various subdivisions to go after things like faulty or counterfeit products. We've seen videos of vapes exploding in pockets. We've heard stories about like tainted medicines making people sick or even killing them. So I feel that in some way to take away IP is to take away the ability for those consumer protection agencies to do the work required to prevent serious harm in any number of ways across our country. So if you are truly worried about the power of corporations and their ability to take advantage of people, I feel like that's all the more reason that IP should be protected. And I'm going to yield my time there.
All right. Do you agree that if IP were treated how current property is treated, like how a house or land, patents and copyright would last for the owner's entire lifetime and could be passed down to their heirs indefinitely with no expiration?
Yeah, if it was treated that way, that would be the case. I think it's currently, what is it, the lifetime of the author plus 70 years, but I think when it was initially implemented, it was only 14 years. So saying that it could be, for less time is, a good like negotiation of that would help protect IP and maybe get the best use out of it, without fully like having to like destroy its, I don't know, fundamental idea.
In practice, with IP on thousands of overlapping components in modern products, is it possible that people might face repeated licensing negotiations or restrictions from multiple owners when trying to build, modify, or produce new things?
Might they face repeated license negotiations from multiple manufacturers? Is that what the question was?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I feel like that would be the case regardless. But in something like auto parts, like if you have some faulty like counterfeit product, or just some like bullshit product that is a full-on replicant of a high value product, while you're trying to slow down from being on the highway at 70 miles an hour, I feel like that's a good reason why that IP should be protected.
If IP created even significant additional barriers to productive action, like more negotiations, higher cost, delays in building or innovation, would that make the underlying ethic at least problematic for human progress and survival?
I mean, there's all sorts of moving parts at play when developing a product for market. So I feel like it's just kind of like it's one of those things that comes with the territory.
Self-ownership. Each of us has exclusive rightful control over our own body. We direct its actions, and to deny this is a performative contradiction, as you would need to use your body to argue against it. From self-ownership, it flows that you should not violate other people's rights to self-ownership. Humans act in the world using scarce means, like resources, land, and materials that are rivalrous. If I use them, you cannot use them without conflict. To enable peaceful cooperation and avoid violence, we need objective rules for assigning exclusive control over these scarce goods. The only consistent rule Respecting self-ownership is that the first person who actually finds an unclaimed resource, like empty land or raw materials, and puts work into using or improving it becomes its owner, keeping it as long as they want to until they choose to sell it or give it away. This way, the ownership is actually tied to effort and use, not just saying mine or waiting for someone else to do nothing. Now let's apply this to so-called IP. Ideas, patterns, inventions, and symbols are non-scarce and non-rivalrous. My use of a recipe or design doesn't deprive you of it. There is no inherent conflict over the idea itself, only over scarce physical embodiments of your own ink, paper, or factory. Granting IP rights gives the creator partial veto power over everyone else's scarce goods, forbidding you from arranging your own materials to build a device or print a book. If ideas were truly property, if you own property, and then patents and copyrights should last forever, indefinite until the holder transferred them. Yet virtually every IP defender insists on limited terms to avoid monopoly harms or gigantic holdup problems that would stifle society in the long run. This concession reveals IP isn't property at all. It's a temporary government policy tool masquerading as a right. But let's take their logic to its conclusion. Embracing perpetual IP would paralyze human action. Modern products involve thousands of components, each potentially owned indefinitely by someone else. You'd need endless licenses just to produce, innovate, or even sustain life, creating a web of restrictions that halts all progress. You need to ask someone else's permission to use their idea, but that itself is an idea which you must ask permission to use. And so on, the chain goes ad infinitum. This ethic implies the near immediate cessation of productive activity, dooming humanity's stagnation and extinction. Proposing such a system is self-contradictory. You must be alive and acting and using scarce resources to argue for it, while claiming those very actions should be forbidden. Thus, the IP ethic is fundamentally anti-human. It's subordinate to our survival as rational, productive beings to artificial claims over known scarce ideas.
All right, I think I got 3 questions for you. So I heard your spiel about self-ownership, and self-ownership means don't violate others' rights to ownership, but if someone steals your property, that infringes on their ownership, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Just generally,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we just need to basically tie the knot here to show that intellectual property is property, because you're conceding that if we can prove that, then it would also fit your self-ownership definition. Are you holding that same standard to land? Like if I buy property and I don't use it and I just sit on it, could that also fit your infringements of self-ownership?
Yes.
Okay. And that's actually pretty interesting. I was expecting to know that. I get the correlation doesn't equal causation, but would you not agree that in the last 50 years that we've seen the most human technological advancement? At the same time, we've also seen the largest expansion of intellectual property laws directly at the same time?
Yes, but as you said earlier, I would argue that's just merely correlation, not causation.
I understand that. That's my follow-up question to that is, so where do you get this idea that IP and this infringement would be an infringement on our markets and slow progress from, if maximalizing IP laws also sees us maximalizing technology?
Because empirically that is the case. I have found a study that shows that, and we have plenty of human innovation before IP, or in spite of IP. Like insulin, for example, was created, and the creator deliberately didn't create an IP because he felt that it should be a product that should be owned to the world, not to a bunch of corporations who would be able to hide behind a patent.
Ask the ladies. I don't need that long. We are here today to discuss intellectual property and how important that is to the fundamental growth of the United States and the living standards for every human being. Throw the baby out with the bathwater arguments are what we've been hearing so far tonight, and even though it's just highlighting a handful of worst case scenarios, these anecdotes still don't underwrite the empirical. It's like like saying that one guy making a patent one way is of deboning ribs somehow makes all deboned ribs patented is just false. 99% of ribs don't follow his process. They don't really have to deal with his patent. The idea of ownership of property is fundamental to the United States. I'm sure everyone here would agree with that. And capitalism fuels innovation. We all know we've heard that. What does that actually mean? Well, that means that somebody goes and puts $20 billion into research, testing, hiring skilled workers, and comes with a new medicine or builds a building or something like that, generally with property. But what we see with IP is we now have cures for obesity. We have smart home algorithms that can lower climate harms and your energy costs. We have unique specialized programs and apps that can order a taxi cab for your fucking dinner with the click of a button. And none of these things would exist without IP because nobody would put up the money to do this. Nobody would ever do this because the $20 billion it costs to build this extensive thing would never get recouped because the next person can just go, oh, cool, thanks, I'm going to sell that now too, and undercut you severely. They'd be waiting for the next sucker to step up and fund something, and then everyone would come and steal it. So IP is necessary for innovation. Why is it fair for someone to take your sacrifice and just steal it for themselves? Why not wait for the next person again to just come and spend their money on this research? Why not just steal? Because without IP, that's theft of their ideas, their labor, their manufacturing, their research, and their money would be completely fine. So now that that's been established, I'm going to use a microcosm because I tend to speak long-winded. I tend to use a lot of citations and get really into the nitty-gritty. I'm trying something different tonight. I'm trying pathos. So we're going to use a microcosm for this idea. We're going to move it over. We have an entrepreneur who came up with a recipe, and since recipes are technically intellectual property, this entrepreneur is named Eugene H. Krabs, and his intellectual property was the Krabby Patty. And there's a bastard named Plankton that's stealing the Krabby Patty. Are you with Plankton or are you with Mr. Krabs? I got one fucking question for you. Are you ready, kids?
Tyler, you said that without IP, we would just see a bunch of theft. But the thing is, without intellectual property, using someone else's idea cannot be theft by definition. How do you square that circle?
Well, more what I was saying there is if we got rid of IP, we would see a bunch of theft. If we didn't have IP, we wouldn't see any innovation because nobody would spend the time, money, and effort into this massive undertaking it takes to create a new medicine or whatnot. So nobody would put that $20 billion in because you're never going to recoup it. It wouldn't technically be legal theft anymore. You are correct. I was using the term colloquially. You got me.
Fair enough. You say that if we don't have, you know, that limited monopoly, that people won't create medicines. What do you say to all of the vaccines and other medicines that were made free to use immediately after their creation? Examples like the Vaccinia vaccine, better known as vaccine for smallpox, things like insulin and penicillin, all of which, after their initial discovery, were made free for everyone to use.
Well, those things take time, money, and cost to use, and the insulin has been significantly improved to fit different body types, different situations, different things. It's not like we're using old school insulin. Medicine has always existed. You can go take some herbs and berries and crush them up into a bowl to get advanced medicine, like a cure for obesity. That's what takes $20 billion. New research, not just things that we just guess and check, and maybe 10 people in the village die before we find the right way and hope that it works, and maybe it's not confirmation bias, but we have no actual testing.
Yeah, but then you end up with situations where they take these products and patent some ridiculous minor change on them to charge boatloads of money, and we see people dying because they can't get their insulin as a result. Like, how is this a morally justifiable system?
And once again, go ahead and answer. Yeah.
Yep, that to me is a baby with the bathwater argument. If you have a specific qualm with the fact that people can change something and repatent it, maybe we could take that away. But that's not invalidating the prompt. That's just saying, I don't like the current system as it is. Hey, man, maybe I'm with you if you give me the argument, but that still says IP is a good thing.
All right. So the first thing I'm going to open with here is to say that I'm not with Plankton or with Mr. Krabs. I'm with humanity. I want everyone to be able to benefit from the ideas and advancements that humanity creates, because we're ultimately creating them as a advancement for the whole human civilization. Sure, we have our limited greed-driven motivations in the short term, but ultimately all technology builds on previous technology, and by limiting how easily we can use previous technology, we are actually slowing down innovation. We have studies posted by the St. Louis Fed by economists Boldrin and Levine showing that not only do patents not increase innovation over the long term, they decrease innovation. If we remove the idea of patents from our productive system, we would actually be able to increase innovation and overall productivity, even despite the fact that there will be, some people that end up putting a lot of money into these advancements that don't get to recoup it. A great way around that is to create nonprofits. There are lots of nonprofit research institutions that rely on donations to do this research, and when they have that research, they give it away for free. All of that research is still being done. So to say that they're not going to do the research just because they can't make a profit on it ignores the fact that this kind of research, this kind of innovation, this kind of advancement is something that has always happened whether or not patent law exists. Patent law just makes it more difficult to actually get ideas out there and into the hands of the populace as a whole, rather than limiting it to some limited ownership just so they can make billions of dollars in profit on something that would benefit everyone.
Much like Tyler, I probably won't take this whole time. First off, just want to say baller ass shirt. I want one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Second off, one question: does time limit, like the time limit, the exclusivity rights of a patent, does that stop all innovation from happening?
It doesn't stop all innovation, but it does significantly slow it down from what it could be.
So if, like, say I patented an idea and it's protected for 10 years, it might be slowed for 10 years, but then my idea gets shared to everyone else. Does that help or hinder innovation?
I would say that hinders innovation, because what if that idea can be improved upon by other people, and that process
it still can be after, let's say if it's
enhanced? But why would you want to delay that enhancement? Why would you want to purposefully make it to where people couldn't make it better for 10 years? That seems that seems entirely backward to me.
Just like you said that they could like repatent a medicine to just change it minutely. They could do the same thing, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing is they can't do that until the original patent expires.
Well, no, it wouldn't be the same thing.
If you take away, it would be based on
if you innovate on my idea,
which would be it. If I innovate on your idea that is still under patent, then you can sue me for patent infringement. Rather than if I improve on your idea with no patent in the way, then that improvement can come out that much sooner.
Okay, would you say that the patent, the time exclusivity on the patent's the main deal for you, correct? Because if I patent something, it has to come out to public domain.
Yeah, the exclusivity is the main problem I have with intellectual property generally and patents specifically, yes.
What if that was reduced to a blanket 1 year for everything universally? You'd still be against it, obviously?
I was just gonna say it's still slowing things down. So yeah, on principle,
so even if it was a day.
I would have less problem with it than the 10-year, but I would still have a problem with it from a principled, basic principle.
I just have to. Right. I feel like it's important that we touch on what Doomer kind of lightly touched upon, because it's important, worth capping. That if you innovate on an existing patent and develop kind of new, not obvious improvements, those are often patentable themselves as their own thing. So
that's actually patentably false.
Yeah, we literally saw this with the Google Sophos lawsuit. Sophos
Not
had
only
a
that-
patent on like grouping speakers together and being able to control their volume all together. Google incorporated something like that into their Google Home setup, where you could control the volume of multiple Google speakers at the same time. Sophos sued them and won.
Yep. Not to mention that we have patent trolls and patent thickets where they do broad patents. An example would be like Humeria, who filed 100 patents of biosimilar composition, which, you know, there can only be so many. And this cost an estimated $7.6 billion extra to American healthcare payers in 1 year. Or we can look at how the similar tactic was used by Ozempic, patenting injection pens and torsion springs and laying out patent thickets to prevent other people from pretty much innovating on top of that. It's not as simple as, let me just add one extra thing. Companies already thought about that and utilize the system to prevent you from doing that. If we just get rid of it, you can innovate. Plus, you're assuming the basic idea already, that your premise is correct, that someone can own an idea. You're the affirmative. You need to justify to a people why you think you can own a fucking idea outside of, oh, it's just different. All right, my arbitrary line is better. You need to stand on that and explain why is it better. You're just assuming it already exists when you haven't justified the principle.
I think we have justified the principle fairly well. All of us talked about the fact that like these large scale products cost 20-30 billion dollars. Like let's talk about like AI, for instance. You have to build a data center, you have to hire researchers, programmers, QA testers, IT software to maintain the databases and whatnot. This costs you 20-30 billion dollars just to start up. It's a massive barrier to entry that most people can't do, and nobody's
open
going
source
to do
is,
it. Hold on,
AI is
nobody's
open
going to do it. Some of it's not.
How do they get their training?
A huge amount of the AI models that are used today are open source, or they are being directly built on top of by the companies that are then closing the source to privatize it. Imagine the kind of innovation we could get in AI if all of these companies were to make all of their AI models and all the training data open source, and then anyone, regardless of whether or not they have access to a giant data center, could improve upon those models, could add additional training data, and then those companies could make use of it. Like, it is a self-reinforcing system to allow them to innovate.
Your system,
one of the bonuses.
Your system is propped up on the IP system. These places would not exist. Nobody would have put that billions of dollars in order to build this infrastructure in the first place. If the next
I challenge that premise. You have not demonstrated that, though.
Let me get the whole. If the next person can just hit Control C, Control V, and now they took $20 billion worth of research and development, and it's theirs now, and they can undercut you on the market for that thing. Certain products are necessary. They need to charge a certain fee to make back the money that they spent in the investment. And you're saying they're not allowed to do that because they can no longer say that thing I built is mine. You're saying they can build a house.
You're going based on this premise that nonprofit research doesn't exist. Like that's basically what you're saying right now, and we know this by itself is false.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that private research completely dwarfs public research. And again,
does it?
Only because IP exists to
that.
give them that dwarfing.
Ancom, let's fact check that. Interesting. It seems like the
NIH
funds crucial. Wait. 99%.
Let me get my whole sentence out.
Okay,
you just keep cutting me off.
You want to admit it?
So again, this is the world without IP. The world without IP is, instead of this new cure that comes out, for this amazing cure that comes out, because they don't have any privacy rights on it, because the next person can just take it, break it down, replicate it, and undercut them on it. They now say anyone that needs this miracle cure has to fly to our facility in Ohio, go through all sorts of security, then they can come in and get it. Because of the fact that it can't be distributed to every home like every other medicine could, the productivity is significantly lower, meaning we keep the price significantly higher. So now we're purchasing out most common people that would be able to afford something that if it was mass produced would be significantly cheaper. So you're saying, sorry, no IP. If you want to keep your secret, you have to keep it locked up in a military bunker and nobody have access to it. You're limiting a potential cure for cancer.
Ozempic pens really cost $1,000 a dose to make. This is a ridiculous argument.
Well, let me take
that's
this
a whole-
because
Speaking
let's not
of
forget his
ridiculous stuff, real
original
quick,
claim.
I just sent Horse a link. Can I ask that you pull that up? I just wanted to ask Ancom, not Ancom, sorry, Kay. Is this process the same as a PB&J as you referenced earlier? As simple as that? This is the patent that you were talking about, the process for deboning the pig. Is this as simple as the PB&J?
The process is not as simple, but it's the same conceptual idea. It's a broad idea of deboning.
Oh, okay. So this entire process that Horse can scroll through is
But
this
nice trying
same
to
kind
get
of
away
thing?
from your boy who just
This is
said
the
something
example you
patently
brought
false.
up.
That you're trying to get away from your boy who said that innovation is
No, I'm not trying to get away from anything. I'm just bringing back the fact that you brought this up as like a PB&J or something.
Federal funding
This is a lot more complicated than that, right?
41% of all basic research
This isn't
is
just
done by the
stopping
US
people from
government,
making
compared
all those
to
boneless rib
35% done
sandwiches,
by
right?
private individuals. 11% of the total R&D alone is done by higher education, despite 2% of it, despite the money.
You don't have to answer. It's fine. But I was just bringing up the fact that that's not
I
a
already
PB&J.
answered. We're not going to let your friend get away with this.
80% of
Nearly
global
28 to
R&D
30% of all U.S. patents rely directly on previous federal funded research. 30% of all patents filed today are rely off of government funded technology. 35% of all basic research is done.
Yes, laws are being used. They are in place and they are being used. Yes.
Okay. So
why should they not be?
That's not the argument I
public
made,
market
though. He's
is the one that's
something I said.
innovating. You are
It's such a minor,
nationalizing the
frivolous
research,
point.
privatizing.
That's not the argument I
You're
made.
pulling the ladder up. It is.
You're
the
just
argument
fact checking
you
something.
made.
No, the argument I made that the private sector dwarfs the public sector on R&D spending, and that's absolutely true. 60 to 80% of global R&D spending is from the private sector.
Right. I feel like medical, specifically that field,
I don't know how you
is going to be
disagree
a
with
little
that.
bit different.
Sorry, what was okay?
I was
were you
just
saying
saying
there?
that specifically the medical field is going to be a little bit different. But I know like Ancom, like if we go back to AI a little bit, I know Ancom previously has posted about, like AI art and kind of how that's shitty, and I prefer people use like stock photography rather than AI, which uses like a ton of resources and everything. But I assume that if you prefer they use stock photography, that and the stock photographer, the photographer for that work would get like a kickback for it, as you said, that you would want their work to be protected from like AI infringement as well. Like if AI replicated their work and it was obvious.
I want
like,
their
wouldn't you want
identity
them-
as the creator protected. Like
So
when
just their
an
identity.
AI
So the AI could still like sell, like use all those resources and sell and profit from their work for some huge corporation, just as long as
they
says
say
Joe
this
Schmo
work was
took this
generated
picture.
was generated using the works of all of these other creators that they like. Yeah,
so it's
like,
recognizing their
give the
intellectual
giant
property.
list.
As long as you do that, then you're okay.
No, it's recognizing their labor, that they have done a thing.
He just wants it to be sourced. Like, hey, listen, this is the
Yeah.
source of where I got my information from.
Like the Creative Commons license or the general public license. These are all forms of copyleft that are designed to get around some of the problems with intellectual property overall. They wouldn't be needed without intellectual property, but they show a world in which intellectual property is not needed to protect the identity and the labor of people who create these creative works, because all they do is they say you have to you have to give attribution for any works that you have done based on this previous work.
We could kind of do that in manufacturing too, if you think about it, right?
I mean, I imagine we would be able to, but you'd have to be a little more specific.
It's just called licensing, I think. So you just license that work to be able to recreate it yourself.
I mean, licensing implies a certain limited use and like more
right, because
than
you're not
just
the original owner.
Who owns the idea? How do you can't own ideas?
But licensing
How do you own an idea?
says
What
you
if
have
someone
to,
comes up with it?
you
how
have
do you
to
come up
go
with...
to the person who created it for permission. All I'm saying is give them the attribution, but you don't need to ask them to build upon their work. That's silly.
Right. Certain ideas
like,
of ownership are a little silly. You're like, oh god, a river runs through your property. You own water, but you don't own water. It's like weird. Yeah. Like there's certain arbitrary things about society that just a thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of arbitrary shit about society, and
That doesn't
part
make
of the
it
reason we
frivolous.
do these debates and we talk about these issues is because we see that, hey, some of these arbitrary things don't make sense, and we want to challenge them. It's the whole
You're
point
taking
of this
arbitrary
debate.
to have an assumption of bad. Arbitrary.
No, I'm
lots of
saying
things are arbitrary. That
Lots of
doesn't
things are
automatically mean
arbitrary,
bad.
and we are challenging whether or not they still belong here. Some of them will, some of them won't, because they serve certain purposes. We're arguing that intellectual property, if it ever had a useful purpose, has long outlived that. And, I know Groofus and others would argue that it never had a useful purpose. I will even grant, for the sake of this argument, that it once did have a useful purpose, but we have outlived that point.
What about the point of, IP and having distinguishable products that are essentially like traceable with a process, procedure, and ownership being used to protect the consumer when things do go awry or are being like counterfeited?
Sorry, say that
Like-
one more time. I was a little bit lost in the question.
Like when products are being counterfeited, and say there's like a half a dozen Tylenol PMs on the shelf, and they're all like kind of one-offs of each other, and it's nobody owns any sort of like idea, and it could all just be like there could be legal knockoffs of any product, and like how do we answer for that taking away the ability to enforce regulation and protect consumers?
It doesn't. There's a fucking 10 million different companies that make fucking Build-A-Bear like stuff, or it's like, hey, this is a teddy bear. This is a teddy bear. There's generic drugs as well. I go in, I don't just see Tylenol. I see like 10 other versions.
Where do those generic drugs come from? Are those expired patents?
Yes, and they would have existed
Yeah,
a lot
imagine
sooner
if
to a
they
lot more
just-
people before they.
Imagine if they were just
stifled.
trade secrets and never shared.
Or didn't make
trade
patents at
secrets are
all.
hard
People
to keep in the modern.
couldn't.
Wait, I got this.
Yeah, you don't
Trade
talk-
secrets are
go
hard
ahead.
to upkeep. Trade secrets are hard to upkeep in the modern age. People are going to reverse engineer and figure out how things are made. It happens all the time.
You should tell TSMC that, because they're going to be fucking scared as shit. They don't maintain patents because of their trade secrets, because they'll be published in public domain after a certain amount of time. That's how
and
TSMC
Intel's
keeps their
already
competitive
out-
advantage.
Yeah, and Intel is already outdoing them with better processes.
By stealing their shit from espionage, I believe, too, right?
So your theory is
Oh,
kind
just
of
like
propped
America
up here.
did.
As I was saying earlier, well, that doesn't really refute his point.
Well,
As I was
Intel is
saying earlier,
American,
your
right?
guys' ideas here are based off of the system that patents brought you. It's like, well, these generic medicines all exist. But those generic medicines came from somebody doing R&D to invent a new medicine that cost them $20 billion. And if we look at, again, what I was saying about private to public funding, we're only looking at the patented funding. What you're not taking into consideration with that 60 to 80% of worldwide funding being private is all the failures. Most of these things fail. 95% of new drugs don't make it to market. This is a risk. This is a risk market that you're investing in, hoping for a high return. That's why it exists, and we just would not have these things otherwise. The idea that I kind of want to challenge another premise here, because you guys are saying that this would benefit the large corporation, but the idea that these corporations wouldn't benefit from your system as well is just kind of wild. And when you take out the idea, like the specialization, like I invented something, this is my specialized thing, this is what keeps my niche mom and pop business open, you're taking that away from them. So now everybody can make their exact product the exact way. And now you're saying all these companies that have massive production that can make things significantly cheaper can mass produce this specialized thing. You're going to force more mom and pop stores out the door the same way you did with grocery stores, and it's going to hurt the consumer. It's going to drive wages down.
No, the biggest way that corporations are the ones that use IP law more than anybody else. Nintendo is a good litigious example of using their IP to strike down other people from innovating on their ideas
that in my
and
argument.
being able to use it. Okay,
I acknowledge that in my argument, but my argument is they're also going to abuse your system just as much. It's going to abuse your
every system has
just as much.
abuse. Every system has
Yes,
abuse.
so then
It
it's not a
depends on
good point
how
for you.
much.
That's my
But
point.
yes,
Is
it
if
is,
your
dude. If
system
something is
is going to
abused,
be
like
abused,
if 80% of a system can be abused versus only 10% of a other system, and the other system gets you more positive externalities, wouldn't you want the other fucking system? Yeah,
You're gonna
because you're
grow-
getting fucked less.
you're
And
going to
that's
grow
the thing. It's like,
monopolies
yeah,
and
everything.
cartel. Because
I
nobody's
want to
going to
point
be
don't
out
able
that
want
to.
Tyler,
mono-
you were
you don't
kind of
want
talking out of
monopolies,
both
you don't-
sides of your mouth by saying that our system would hurt big corporations because no one would put in the R&D money to develop these things, and then saying it would help big corporations in other ways. Which is it?
No. I'm saying it hurt the consumer because nobody would make that investment in R&D. But all these corporations that
R&D
already
only
exist
is
that can
inflated
already
because
like it might hurt medical corporations, but big box store Walmart is going to see all these patented things that these specialized stores sell and say, well, now we can sell all that. We can do it cheaper. So you're out of business. You're out of business. You're out of business. And we control 60% of jobs in the United States just because we know how to make shit cheaper.
But companies are always like suing and putting mom and pop and competitions out of business or buying them up right off the.
So let them
right
do
off
it
the
more?
top.
So help them?
No, what it is that if you're allowed to innovate and without these roadblocks, you're going to have three ways that are going to benefit the customer. It's like to stand out, you're either going to have to innovate, which is why innovation is going to keep on going. You're going to have to make it cheaper, which helps everybody in the US. How do you protect it? It doesn't need protecting. It's a natural evolution of competition.
Well, if you need to
marketplace.
compete, you need to innovate, and then Walmart just takes that innovation, runs with it. Now
yeah,
and
then you take their innovation and you.
But you can't do it as well. You don't have the warehouses, you don't have the distribution, you don't have the processes laid out. You don't have anything. You have an idea.
Comparative advantage. No, it's comparative.
The comparative advantage is on
Everybody-
them. They have everything compared to you.
Judges,
that's
if
not
you
what
want
comparative
4
advantage is.
companies running everything in the United States, vote for these guys.
I mean, companies are running everything
under the
because they have
existing
the
IP
and
system.
money.
That's not a good argument.
50% of jobs are mom and pop in the United States right now. I think it's like 47%. So no, it wouldn't
A
be
lot
like
of
you'd
them
have
have to
4
pay
companies
licensing
running
fees. They have to pay licensing fees. This makes you poor. This makes you poor.
Who?
Paying licensing fees.
Who does the licensing fee go to?
It's going to go to the
creator, the inventor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but
just
you
making
don't
sure.
have natural ownership over an
more
idea.
specifically, the patent owner, which if we get
whoever owns
into
the patent.
problem with patent sharks and patent trolls, that's a whole other argument that we can bring to bear to say the problem.
Yeah, but we can
one of the
regulate
biggest
that. We don't have
problems
to
right now
throw out patents for that, right?
Who's
we
the
don't
person
have to,
regulate
earlier?
but
patent
it's one of the
trolls.
many problems with patents. So, like we're saying, there are so many individual, independent problems with patents that it doesn't make sense to keep them around.
Do you recognize any benefit from them? The encouragement for innovation by pushing anything to public domain or for anything like that?
I mean, if everything was just public domain to begin with,
But they wouldn't. People patent it to get that exclusivity period, to take advantage of their own idea, to be able to license it to Walmart.
You already get
Like
that
that
with
doesn't
first
happen
movers advantage.
if they don't have the protections.
First
They can
movers
keep it
advantage
to
is
themselves and use it for like their personal benefit. That's fine. People did that historically, but you can't go out and publish your idea or whatnot because someone else is just going to take it. That's why we have so much historical like advantages or protections for like authors and stuff.
Science has been built on people sharing their ideas and their innovations freely for hundreds of years. So, like, the history of the very development and advancement and innovation
that history of IP laws have gone along with it. There's been protections for books and authors as long as you're talking about.
And if anything, it has hampered innovation because we don't get to see the advancements build upon one another nearly as quickly.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you're a first mover advantage and you're getting your first move, you first created something. It takes time for everybody else to like figure out how to make that.
Manufacturing is so expensive to get up and
makes you
running,
stand
though.
up.
So
I mean, yes, and that's the
I'm going to go ahead and
investment
put
you take.
5 more minutes on just so you
that's
guys can put a
why-
bow on it.
that's-
Go ahead, keep going.
And that's why such bigger firms existing, like they were saying, already having the infrastructure, like to sweep your legs out from under you after you've invested so much. Just that's why you deserve a period of time to recoup off your idea.
I mean, you only need so much money to recoup off the idea because you use IP law to constrain ideas, which means you're the sole, owner of that idea and need to do big innovations on top of it. If a lot of people are doing small innovations, most of the R&D work is being spread out instead of centralized, so you're able to piggyback off of everybody else as they're allowed to piggyback off of you. R&D would deflate under IP. And most R&D, again, is piggybacking off of public funds and research. Anyway, so
In the medical
know,
field, at least, is what you cited.
it wasn't just
I'd
medical
also
field.
I'd also like to provide a source for what Kay is saying, because there is very little, if not no, evidence to show that IP or having IP shows that innovation, it protects innovation or encourages innovation. If anything, it just allows and incentivizes people and corporations to guard, to create a patent and then to guard it and not to go any further with that and try to prevent people from further innovating so that they can continue to make their money off their patent. And I will drop that study into Radish's chat.
I mean, you can cite whatever study you want. At the end of the day, we have seen, again, as you admitted, the largest rise in technology, a growth spurt in humanity that's never been seen before, dwarfs the Industrial Revolution in terms of what we've grown from the first computer to right now. And also, patent
you know what
laws
also dwarfs the Industrial Revolution? Population. Population increase is the best predictor of innovation.
Not to mention the Industrial Revolution was credited to the push by the U.S. government to do corporate espionage and steal ideas from Britain and bring it into the U.S.
Hold on.
Basically what China did. Basically what China did for...
So China is out innovating us instead of stealing all of our IP? Because I think they're stealing hundreds of billions of dollars in IP in every year, not out innovating us.
Inaccurate number, but also what happened when they ignored patent law. They had the biggest leap for any country ever in modern human history. They brought so many people out of poverty, and
I'm sure they did.
Catch up in a few decades.
I'm sure they did. And piggybacking off of all of our fucking work, they took
in
it
America
all
piggybacked off of Britain, and Britain piggybacked off of other
No.
people. You're ignoring the fact.
No.
Treasury Secretary.
But who do you want to piggyback off
Hamilton,
of us right now by taking this away?
Treasurer Secretary Hamilton literally gave rewards to individuals who brought secrets of extraordinary value from abroad. Slater illegally imported a loom and started and helped start the American Industrial Revolution off of stolen trade secrets from Britain. It was called the father of American manufacturing. And Francis Cobalt also took tours of factories in order to copy patents, bring it back. The Patent Act of 1793 allowed Americans to patent technology they had simply pirated from abroad. For example, George Parkinson was awarded in 1791 a patent for a textile machine that was an unoriginal copy of the British design. The U.S. government even paid his family for the relocation expense. America piggied off of what came before.
In
China
the 1700s, that has to do with my tech point from the last 50 years. So I think you're missing about 200 years in between.
You just mentioned the Industrial Revolution. Don't act like you didn't.
I said since the Industrial Revolution. I use it as a goalpost to say how crazy the tech revolution's been. That's it.
And the tech
I was talking about the last
right now
50
is
years.
piggybacking off of public-funded research and government-funded
All
research.
ideas piggyback off other ideas. I really don't think this is that big of gotcha. Whether it's like music or manufacturing, all ideas literally piggyback off another. This isn't that big of a surprise, I don't think.
What was the Patent Act that you said passed?
No, it's blatant. It's just obvious.
1793.
The Patent Act of 1793.
I was about to say, I think that year's off.
No, 1793. The Patent Act of 1793. So what do we have here, gentlemen? I mean, you say that it boosts innovation, but it seems that innovation existed before. Okay. Go ahead.
I'd like to.
Innovation's not going to go away. It's just going to be less. We're not going to get big things.
I'd like to end this discussion with kind of a rhetorical question. Should philosopher X be charged with copyright infringement for using or taking the ideas from a previous philosopher?
ANCOM, you said something to the effect of there was a study saying patents decrease innovation and not increase them. Is that the same question that both of you wanted asked or expounded on? Yeah, okay, cool. Can you please expand on that just a little bit and explain to the judges what it is you meant by that? There was a study saying patents decrease innovation and not increase them.
The study that Groofus posted is the study I was referring
That's the study? Okay, fantastic. And
yes.
And okay. And can you just give us a quick paraphrase, just a quick 1 minute telling us what it was that said? Because we obviously don't have the time to sit here and read it right now on stream.
Yeah, no, I can give I can just read the introduction because I think it sums it up nicely.
Okay.
The case against patents can be summarized briefly. There is no empirical evidence that they serve to increase innovation and productivity unless the latter is identified with the number of patents awarded, which, as evidence shows, has no correlation with measured productivity. This is at the root of the patent puzzle. In spite of the enormous increase in the number of patents and in the strength of their legal protection, we have neither seen a dramatic acceleration in the rate of technological progress, nor a major increase in the levels of R&D expenditure. And then it goes on to talk about more of the paper, but that's a good summary.
Yeah, no, I just you made the claim ANCAP that we've outlived the need for IP, and I don't know if you'd specifically explain that. So I just wanted to ask you about that.
You said ANCAP. I think you meant ANCOM because Groofus is the ANCAP,
sorry.
and I just want to make sure that
ANCOM,
the right person was being addressed. So like this was more of a personal opinion that I can see why it may have had some utility in the past, but I don't think that we can make an argument that it still maintains whatever utility it has today, and even the utility that may have existed in the past is questionable.
So yeah, first I just want to say thanks for everyone coming. Kay and Groofus, always awesome having you guys on the other side of the table. I will say I think we heard a lot of like emotional appeal about some of the protections, but I do just want to reiterate, when a person files a patent, they're getting those exclusive rights for only a limited time, and then that idea gets shared with everyone else. That's the big benefit there, is that ending part, and I think too much is getting focused on the exclusivity rights at the very beginning to kind of necessitate that kind of sharing and innovation that we want to encourage, which is ideally why the founders put it in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 says right there, Congress has the power to promote these for the progress of science and arts by granting authors and inventors limited exclusive rights to their works. This isn't like a permanent setup for monopoly or anything. That's actually what they wanted to address when they put this in, is avoidance of that. They saw with the British colonies, with some of even our early colonies, people, accumulating mass, just taking advantage of their sheer size by hoarding knowledge and keeping everything a secret pretty much. So that's why we have this system to encourage the sharing of ideas pretty much. There is an exclusivity right, but I think even if we limited that to a day, I mean, that's still saying we want to protect these legal rights. And I think the other side of the argument is just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We can solve a lot of the problems they bring up with regulations without throwing out the whole system. And I'll see the rest.
All right, so what we see today is a fundamental misunderstanding of the concepts of market and freedom. The question was asked, why do people make things? Because they need money and out of necessity. Why do people innovate? To stand out from competition and improve how they do things. How would they make money if you can just steal their idea? Well, you need to make it better, cheaper, or a niche version, and with comparative advantage. Not everybody can do everything, and with first movers advantage, you have a while before the competition can even catch up to you, which means that you've already established a pathway of doing these things. They ignore market failures such as WHO finding that Gilead Science was overpricing about $84,000 for 12 weeks of treatment instead of the market rate of that could have been of 250, and this kept 93% of their customers of 71 million of global patients out of treatment for 71 years. And they also purposely found that they were using toxic HIV drugs for 10 years to maximize profits while waiting for their patent to expire. But it's not like my opponents even believe what they're saying. Average Debate Enjoyer over here has a video on his YouTube channel where he talks about wanting to an open source think tank and to use other people's ideas for his channel to debate. And he also on his Twitter says that the reason why monopoly laws were created is because markets use bad tactics to completely take over. So it seems that Tyler doesn't like monopolies and realizes that they're used to take over sections and hurt competition. Doomer messaged me saying DMCA is an authoritarian overreach, that he prefers open source, and that when that's not available, he rides the high seas, and even talks about completely switching over to Linux and graphing OS. Open source stuff. And while I don't know Chief personally enough, I do know that we're streaming on a platform built on open source software, on a computer technology that exists because of patent-free technology, internet technology that was built off of public funds, and patent-free technology as well as open source research. So by default, it seems like everybody here agrees with me. It just seems that they aren't willing to admit it. So when you're asking yourself, if patent law is justified, realize that they didn't address any of this, and if in of themselves actively engage in a patent free lifestyle and enjoys its fruits of labor. I end my time.
Focusing on medicine in a debate about IP makes sense. A lot of people think healthcare should be decommodified. I get that angle. But, when we were talking about IP, despite it being brought up as a moral issue, it's really more about economic growth. And like I said, pairing with the ability to protect the consumer. Innovators deserve the ability to recoup their investment and protect their ability to sell their idea. You just looked at videos from Shark Tank, but some good ideas, people that don't have the ability to have reach with their very good idea get to put it in front of someone who can, instead of going on Shark Tank and having 4 different sharks walk away with your idea and start producing it in mass and totally fucking you into the ground with it. You get to actually get profit from that. So that paired with Twitch is on Amazon, YouTube's a major company. Just because the software we brokies use to connect to it is open source doesn't mean the platforms itself are. Those are huge capitalist firms, so that's fucking wild. But yeah, I get there's plenty of reasons not to like corporations, but IP does help protect the consumer as well as innovators. So, to allow agencies like the FTC to go after faulty and counterfeit products, so we don't have Lutch's vape exploding in his hand, so we don't have faulty auto parts sending us off highway off ramps at 70 miles an hour when our brakes fail, so we don't get poisoned by counterfeit pharmaceuticals. I think it's worth protecting IP. I'll yield my time.
We start with self-ownership. You have exclusive control over your own body. This leads to the fact that you should not aggress upon someone else. Scarcity is why property and rights exist. Land, tools, your ink, your paper, these are rivalrous. If I use them, you cannot. The conflict demands rules. If the first person to use an unclaimed resource owns it and holding it indefinitely until they transfer it. Ideas, inventions, and expressions, the core of intellectual property, are not scarce. My use of recipe, design, or formula does not deprive you of it. No conflict exists over the idea itself. IP creates artificial conflict by forbidding you from using your own scarce property, your ink, paper, tools, to copy or build. That is the key. IP does not protect property, it invades it. If IP were genuine property, it would be held like real property today. Lifetime plus inheritance, no automatic expiration. But no one who defends perpetual IP. Because indefinite control over non-scarce ideas would lock thousands of claims on every product component, requiring endless licenses and negotiations. Actions would freeze, innovation would die, humanity would stagnate. An ethic that logically ends in the paralysis of productive action while you act to defend it is a contradiction. It is an anti-human ethic at its core. Our opponents say IP is needed for incentives, but if non-scarcity is the problem, Why create artificial scarcity through state force instead of letting markets reward creators through first mover advantages, reputation, speed, branding, patronage, subscription, and secrecy where it makes sense? History proves it works. Boldrin and Levine's 150-year, 60-country study shows no strong evidence that IP boosts innovation, just more patents and lawsuits. Fashion, cuisine, open source software all innovate rapidly without monopolies. Choose freedom, choose humanity, abolish IP.
To address the character attacks for the goals of my channel being open source think tank, one, that's because that cost me $0. I'm not doing $20 billion of R&D. And also, it's my choice, which should be the choice of every inventor. I'm more than happy when people want to make things open source, but that should be their choice. What they want to do is strip them of that choice and force them to share the roots of their labor, which I expected from the communists, but not the other two. So we got Bloom plus Van Reen 2020, Kellogg/Northward Research 2020, Change et al. 2013, 2018, Berkey in 2013, and about 10 more studies that back that innovation flourishes under patents. But we got claims over and over and over that nothing backs it, nothing backs it, nothing backs it. Look at our one study, nothing backs it. I can give you a dozen studies that back it. So I just think either that was lack of preparation or intentional dishonesty. We have to admit that the rise in, we have one person, two people admitting that the rise in IP law correlated with the largest rise in technology we have ever seen. Just going back to one study over and over saying, well, actually, it shows there's no evidence. So nobody will spend $20 billion to invent something new if all that massive amount of work can be stolen and you're $20 billion in debt. Judges, if you had $20 billion, would you invest it knowing somebody could steal that and undercut you, meaning you could make zero of it back? Nobody would do that shit. All these ideas that the other side we're talking about, generic drugs, for instance, piggyback off the system that we have where R&D already exists. Now, most drug research leads to nothing. 95% of new drugs don't make it to market, or drug research doesn't make it to market. 60 to 70% of R&D used in just the medical field in the United States is privately funded. What we got as a caveat for that, the addressing for that, was just the ones that make it to patent. But that just completely ignores all the failures. Most of this comes from private funders, and it's a huge risk. What we see here was what I said earlier. The other side keeps hammering down on how corporations abuse this system. It's a bad thing. But they openly admitted that corporations would also abuse their system. They just say not as much. But they couldn't come up with a negation to the fact that this house out the middle class. Well, they even said, yeah, so what? So 4 companies would run the entire world, which is kind of the libertarian idea of a mega city, but with no Judge Dredd. But 4 corporations would run the world and price out all these specializations, all these mom and pop stores, further hollowing out our middle class. Most of these arguments have been throw the entire system out because I say so, and I didn't look up a counter study. So really, at the end of the day, I think most of our arguments kind of rang true here, and I hope the judges see it that way as well. You're both beautiful, and I love you, and we can hang out later.
So we were accused of forcing people into something, but the only people forcing someone to do anything is the ones who are forcing you to adhere to IP law. We can give dozens of studies. You guys haven't given one. We've listed about 15 different statistics. If we need to go over them again, we can show the federal government funds 41% of all basic research in the U.S. compared to only 35% coming from private innovation. We can show that higher education contributes 11% of total U.S. R&D, despite only making up 2% of patents. We can show that 10% of all new commercial products and processes are based directly on university research, and another 10% would have been significantly delayed without it. 28 to 30% of all U.S. patents rely directly or indirectly on previous federally funded research. Private funders piggyback on free and open source information. The risk and cost is bared by humanity so they can pull the ladder up from the rest of us. If information was made freely and openly available, you wouldn't need $20 billion to make a single innovation, because you would have so many more people all working in tandem and yet together to build innovations, because that's what humanity does. It is in our fundamental nature to advance ourselves. It doesn't matter if there is if there are laws protecting those ideas. The ideas come regardless. We have the communications infrastructure, which was the main reason that prior to mass communication, or even, you know, the basic telegraph, most innovations didn't get spread around. Now we have that. We can make these ideas available to anyone, and anyone can use their resources, their time, and their energy to build upon that and share it with all. That's my closing.